Today on CodeDependent, I wanted to take a little tangent and talk about Flash authoring. In particular, I want to show how to produce a reusable library using Flash authoring. So this isn't about Flex, instead it's about producing a library that you could actually use within Flash standalone projects, Flash Pro projects. And you could also use these in Flex projects. But the point of this is to come up with a library that is independent of any Flex content. So I have this set of effects that I've helped create for Flex 4. Gives you all the power of, that we had in Flex 3, but we've added new effects, we've added new functionality, all these capabilities, all this stuff I've been talking on and on about in these videos recently. But I realized at some point that the underlying timing engine that we have for the effects is not actually dependent on Flex itself. So the animation class and the objects that it depends on, like motion path and simple motion path and animation target and the new easing capabilities and the type interpolation capabilities, all this stuff has nothing to do with Flex. Instead, it's all about animation, timing, running a timer, getting callbacks, calculating values. So I thought, well, maybe it would be useful to break that out of the Flex context and provide a standalone library that people could then use in Flex projects if they wish, if they want to run animations at a lower level than using effects. Or they could also use it in Flash authoring projects. Now, there are tons of tweening libraries out there, and there's some pretty awesome stuff going out there, and I don't propose this as trying to replace any of those. Instead, it's in some sense, it's kind of an intellectual exercise. Could we do this? Could we break the dependencies and provide this thing? But also maybe it is a tweening engine that people could use if they're interested in writing code that's actually portable between Flex and Flash. If they want to use the effects engine and they get used to using animation and the capabilities in the API that it has in their Flex projects, wouldn't it be nice if they could also use the same kind of thing in their Flash projects? So this is what motivated me to go down the path of doing this. And then I went into Flash authoring and I tried to figure out how to create a standalone library. And I hit a wall almost immediately. I had no idea how to do this. It was, to me, not very intuitive for creating a standalone library. And this is probably because I'm not a Flash authoring developer. I don't use it a lot. I don't have a lot of experience with it, so it was all new to me. I didn't know the right places to look. So I sought help from a friend of mine on the Flash player team, Trevor McCauley. So I'd like to give a shout out to Trevor and say thanks for the help. And please go check out his blog. At least one of his blogs is Sinocular.com. Lots of great information about the Flash player, Flash authoring, Flash in general. And he's been a big help with various issues I encountered, including this one. So let's step through what it takes to actually create a standalone library in Flash authoring. So first of all, we're in Flash authoring here. So we have Flash CS4 installed. Let's go ahead and create an ActionScript 3 project. And this is something that I will save in a folder that I've created that has all the source code that I care about in there. So we'll call this flexi.fla. Flexi will be the name of my library. And if we take a look at it in Windows Explorer, here it is, the FLA project right there. And this is the folder. These are the folders in which I've saved all the source code that's going to provide the classes for this standalone library. Now, I should point out that I didn't simply take the classes as they were. I had to rip out some dependencies that were there, such as resource bundles for localization stuff. So some of the error strings that I was using needed to be localized. So that depended on Flex functionality. And there were various other things that had small dependencies. But I basically spent the duration of a subway ride to work one morning, ripping out the dependencies were there, modifying things slightly to produce code for Flexi that is independent of Flex. And that's what's in these folders down here. So here we are in our project. Now, in order to create a reusable library, we need to change the publishing settings. And we'll go ahead and do that here. We'll go to Flash and say export SWIC. So this tells it actually, when it's published, it's going to produce not just a SWIF file, which is the sort of runnable object that runs on Flash Player, but a SWIC file, which is the library that another project could actually load and link with to create its application. So we're going to export a SWIC, and then we're going to add the code that actually tells it what it's going to export, what it's going to include in this library. So we'll go into the ActionScript code editor, and we'll paste in some code that I got. I'm not going to bore you with actually typing it in, but I will walk through and show you what we're doing. So we're basically saying We're going to import a bunch of stuff, and this is relative to where the project is saved. Or you could put the project somewhere else and then point to it through the dialogues, but this seemed easier. So since we're saving the fly in the same directory as those folders, so we have the folders of Flexi, MX, and Spark, then we can say, OK, import everything in the Flexi directory, import everything in the Spark Effects Animation directory, import everything in the Spark Effects Easing directory and the Interpolation directory, and import MX Effects Easing. So if we take a look at the folders in Windows Explorer, we have Flexi has something called Property Animator. This is a new object that I created specifically for taking the calculated values from animation and setting those on target objects and properties. We have MX. I imported the bounce and elastic effects because the flex effects by those name actually depends on this old functionality. We imported effect events. Those are just constants that are used in animation for sending out information about start and stop and end and update events. And then we imported actually all the classes from the animation class and its dependency classes itself. So none of these are the effects classes. Instead, it's just the timing engine underneath Flex 4 Effects. OK, so we've got all the code in there that defines it. And then all we do is specify the classes that are not automatically going to be included by reference somewhere else. So if animation includes motion path in its code, then motion path will be picked up automatically. But if motion path is not referred to directly by animation or any of these other classes, then I better include it. So here I just say class name with a semicolon at the end. And I do that for all the other classes that aren't automatically included by reference in some other class. And that's all you need to do. So I'm not doing anything with the classes. I'm simply specifying the names. And that will drag them in to be produced when I actually publish the library. So now I go up here and I say publish the library. Does the publishing operation. The publishing operation normally spits out the Swift file, which is the thing that actually runs in the Flash player. But in this case, if we look in the Windows Explorer directory, we see that there is not only a Swift file, but there's also a SWIC file, and that's our reusable library. So here we have a 13K library that has all the functionality of animation with the capabilities of Flex 4 Effects that we've talked about before, except it's in a reusable library that has no dependencies on Flex. So you could now write a Flash project that actually uses this reusable library in the same way that you would do it in Flex. And we'll see that in a future episode. If you want to see the code for this and the reusable library itself, check out my blog at graphics-geek.blogspot.com.